Hello, hello. Welcome to the Outsmart Overeating podcast. I'm super excited to announce we have our very first client interview on the show, and it's none other than Deon, who Deon, I'm just going to allow you to introduce yourself here, but I just want to first give you props as someone who's been in the program for 11-ish months, almost a year now. You
Come on here.
started with Outsmart Overeating, is that right? Or
Yeah.
Unstuffed, and then here we are in Masterfull. So you're really a client who has been around for a while, and I want to get your perspective on that for sure. But just thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day as a law student, a mother, a employee, and doing all the things to have a conversation with Coach Steph and I today.
Well, I'm honored y'all asked me. But yeah, my name's Deon. I'm 28, but my birthday's tomorrow. So as of when we're recording, I'm about to be 29, and I live in Louisiana, right outside of Baton Rouge. I'm about an hour away from where Leslie is in Louisiana.
Yeah, so why don't you go ahead, if you don't mind, just take a moment to share a little bit about your background with our listeners, help them paint a picture of why you even joined the program in the first place.
Sure. So my background is I used to compete for Miss Louisiana. So I did a lot of the cliche stuff. I never hopped on any mainstream, diet like paleo, keto, or anything like that. But, I did do the cliche calorie counting. I can't tell you how many times I downloaded my Fitness Pal and calculated that if I wanted to lose 1 pound every 2 weeks, I'd have to eat 1,200 calories a day because I'm a petite person. I'm 5'2". And I would try to do that for a few days and just get really aggravated and tired and grumpy and fall off and just do the hop on, hop off thing. But even after I got done with pageants, I knew I didn't really want to live like that anymore. So I sort of subscribed to the whole everything in moderation, mentality. And eventually I would get to a point every few months though, and it was either because, I had a day where I wasn't feeling great, or I just saw something else or someone else that sort of like sparked it in my mind that no, I can get back to, my pageant days. And I would download my Fitness Pal all over again and get frustrated and do the whole thing. But as far as what really made me pull the trigger on joining the program was I had this urge all of a sudden to see my old baton twirling videos. That was my talent competing in Miss Louisiana. And I couldn't find these videos anywhere. And I just really wanted to see it. And my grandmother offered me her handy cam, the old camcorders. She had a bunch on there. So I got it and I was trying to just sort of, extract some of these videos out of this Y2K technology. And I don't know how she had all these pictures in here. If she somehow, uploaded them from her computer, that her phone put them, I don't know. But I found this picture I sent to her in my college bedroom, and I was decked out in my swimsuit gear, kind of doing a practice run to compete. Which, your swimsuit stage gear, that's going to be like your tan, your Venus swimsuit, your 6-inch heels, the jewelry, and everything. And, this was me as of about 12 months ago looking at this, probably about 10-year-old picture. And my mouth just dropped open because I looked amazing. But then it kind of hit me because I did not think I looked good at all during that time. And it just really made me think, wow, I've never been at peace with my body or how I've looked. And my eating habits have always, been good for a month and then, down for a month. So I was just sort of sick of jumping all over the spectrum and I wanted some consistency, which following Leslie and Stephanie for as long as I have on social media, consistency seems to, be the big thing. So I wanted some of that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the reality is most dieters don't achieve their goal long term because something about their plan is unsustainable. And so they eventually quit and can't maintain the consistency. And without consistency, we can't develop a habit that allows us to maintain the weight loss that we achieve, right? So generally speaking, it's because something about the plan was too extreme under most circumstances, or life happens. We get a new job, we have a child, we move across the country, we get married, whatever, our circumstances change, and then our behavior, our habits change as a result. So Steph, I'd love to kind of get your insight here.
I think it's so relatable to look back at older photos, as you said, 10 years ago, and that was basically your whole life at the time. I'm sure you were eating, drinking, and sleeping, pageant prep and practice and all the things. And we tend to look back at those versions of ourselves and compare and feel so disoriented because it's like you said, I wasn't happy then. So at what point is good enough good enough? When do I ever get to be happy? And you see that saying going around social media all the time of, I wish I was as fat as I was 10 years ago and hated my body then and wished I was 10 pounds lighter than that, just like and on and on and on. And the message is that we need to really get some perspective and stop living in this tomorrow thinking that someday somewhere out there is this perfect body that is going to make us happy. That's not where it lives. So we need to stop living this life of regret and wishing and just be a little more present. I think it's a great message, but so relatable.
Yeah, it's really a testament to how losing 20, 30, 40, 60, 80 pounds doesn't necessarily guarantee that we are going to be any happier. And I can also remember being in a much smaller body and wishing that it looked different at that point in time as well, right? It was just, even in high school, it was like not good enough. And I was an athlete. I mean, I was like a 16-year-old. It's just kind of ridiculous that the body image issues were already starting to develop at such a young age, and thinking that like I had cellulite. And it's funny because I look back on the photos and I'm like, where did you even like get that thought? But the message was clear. My body was not a safe place for me to live in. That cellulite was bad. And so, of course, that put me on a path of trying to solve a problem that I was convinced needed to be solved due to our beauty standards. And Deon, because you are a pageant girl, a lot of people that are listening to this podcast are going to be like, well, she's conventionally attractive, like you have it all, right? But I do think that you bring a unique perspective to the conversation, because I guess like if somebody were to cross you on the street, they would probably think, oh, she fits like the ideal. And here you are internally struggling on your own. You mentioned joining the program, but I guess what I want to know is, when you saw the footage of you or the picture of you at that point, was the outcome that you were desiring to lose weight so you could get kind of back into that pre-pageant body? Or was it more motivated by like, okay, I need to figure out how to do this in a sustainable way, lose weight? Was it like, I guess what I'm asking is, was your motivator weight loss, or was your motivator like trying to develop a healthier relationship with food in your body?
Sure. And I just want to add the whole conventionally, she must be conventionally this, there was this thing called the message board in Miss Louisiana. It was very public. It was not something you had to get into. And I mean, my name was on there all the time for not being fit enough for pageants, so it's kind of like you get into this next tier and you're like this is an awful way to say it, but it's a way to easily understand. It's like you're the worst of the best, So it's that never good enough thing. And I'm sure the girls that won swimsuit could all, won the swimsuit category could all also say that they never felt they were good enough. But anyway, yeah, so that was actually something as far as what my goals were when I joined, that Stephanie and I talked about a lot. Was I kind of felt like I had a two-part goal, and that sometimes it felt like they were contradicting each other, but in my heart I didn't feel like they were. And it was always sort of how to like marry and balance those two things together. It was that I knew I had a little bit of weight to lose. I had been a few pounds lighter at this point in my life. because it was all the extreme stuff, well, I'm going to count calories and try to eat 1,200 calories for like 2 weeks. And then I would, go back and slowly gain those pounds back. So I wanted to get back to just something that I could sustain. And I wasn't really sure how many pounds that was, if any, but of course I wanted to lose a little bit of weight. And the other part was I just wanted peace. I just wanted peace with my body, with my eating habits. I was just so tired of convincing myself one week, everything in moderation. You shouldn't be worried about flat stomach at this point in your life. This and that, like, you look great, move on, versus the next week, seeing a really hot mom at daycare get out of the car and it's like, well, she can do it. I can do it too. And I'm back on the, extreme mindset. I wanted peace in whatever way that came.
Sounds like a lot of food noise then, rules and maybe inner critic, negative self-talk happening, not feeling good enough. Did you feel like, I guess my curiosity is rooted in why this plan, why Unstuffed, why us, right? Was there something specific that kind of resonated or spoke to you? Because there's a lot of, as we all know, ways to go about losing weight, but there had to be something about this message in particular that spoke to you to the point where you were willing to invest the time, money, and effort, especially during circumstances where most people would check out, right? You're busy, about to graduate from law school. Like I said, obviously full-time mom, like you had a lot of reasons that sound very like real and justified to check out and say, yeah, but not right now. But you chose to go all in instead. And so I guess it's a two-part question. Number one, why this program? And number two, why now, right? When you have all the reasons not to.
Sure. So when I decided I wanted something, and that I wanted to bring coaching into it in some kind of capacity, because, like I said, I've been following your content for a very long time and you're all about, how you can get to where you want to go quicker with with coaches. And there was actually another guy I was following and I was deciding between this program and yours. And he was all specifically about, petite women and how it's, difficult to lose weight when you're petite and you're not a very active person, the calorie deficit that would mean and everything. But I decided, you happen to be running that, you opened the doors to Outsmart Overeating, which was the 6-week, program. Well, let me just message her. But then, overeating was the big thing. I was like, well, when you think overeating, before you join a program like this and you truly understand what overeating is, you think binge eating. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to people's minds for the most part when you think of overeating. And I DM'd you a bunch of questions because I think the deadline was the next day to, get in before everything shut off. And I just decided that everything, you had said all these years just made so much sense. So I, messaged you that and I said, hey, I don't think I'm an overeater. Do you think this would be right for me? I just knew I wanted to get around, you and Stephanie's content was what I ultimately wanted. I wanted to be up close and personal with it. I was like, oh, they sound like me though. And then you immediately responded back with you were very busy clearly because you sent me a voice memo and answered all my questions. And I just thought, man, if I'm going to get immediate communication from this person and she made all this sense and that I just have so much respect for and admiration for all these years, like this is worth an honest try if this is the kind of communication and value I'm going to get out of this. So that's how I ended up in Outsmart Overeating, which eventually turned into Unstuffed and eventually turned into Masterfull for me.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like the doors were open. The timing was right. You were a little, I don't know. It sounds like you were about to cheat on us with somebody else, Steve. But I appreciate the commitment. And so we applied a little bit of pressure. It sounded like, okay, I'm not an overeater, but these women make sense. Like the message resonates with me. It's funny that your brain goes to like binge eating when you hear overeating, because you're actually the first person that I've heard say that. And, you know, it's good insight to know that that's where your mind is. But since joining Outsmart Overeating, did you learn that you do occasionally overeat?
I think a lot more than occasional. I guess even if you don't think binge eating, you think, I mean, I think about my husband who loves to eat, just sitting back and patting his belly. Like he's really happy, you know, which I
Yeah.
don't think I ever did very often.
Yeah. And the reality is a lot of the work that we do in the program is helping people identify those sneaky overeats, even, right? The impulsive overeats that are just enough to kind of keep you frustrated and pissed off because I'm doing all the right things, but we're not accounting for like the handful of nuts here and the, you know, the, I don't know, soft drink there or whatever the case may be, whether it's a glass of wine. I mean, all of this little by little is no longer little. And so that's kind of what we help people identify is this is why maybe you have been able to lose weight, but haven't been able to maybe lose those last 5, 10, 15 quote unquote stubborn pounds by revealing what's in their subconscious mind, because we can't change what is not in the conscious mind. Steph?
100%. And, you know, we've talked so many times, Leslie and I, about how do we say the words that people are going to resonate with. And so I thought the exact same thing, which is like, you know, you think overeating, you kind of think binge eating. And I kind of feel this similarly, not necessarily binge eating, but I think a lot of people don't identify as overeaters because they're distracted eaters, they're grazers, they're pickers, they're not really conscious for their meals a lot of the time until they actually sit down and have a meal, maybe at the end of the day, and think, I haven't eaten anything all day. I'm like, girl, you've been eating all day. You just weren't there for it. But and ask me how I know, you know, that was my life as a hairdresser. So you just kind of pick and snack and whatever in between your appointments and get it in where you can get it in. And then you're just famished by the end of the day. And that's when you finally get to rest and take care of yourself, even though you're nowhere near hungry. But you just, what does that have to do with anything, right? And so I just really appreciate the commitment that you made, Deon, because as Leslie mentioned, you had a laundry list of reasons why this could have been a terrible time for you to sign up. But not only did you sign up, you showed up consistently, regularly, not just for the coaching calls, but for the work. You did the journaling and paying attention and asking the questions and made sure that you were engaged. And if there were times where you were missing calls because, I don't know, exams, finals, those kinds of things were going on, you still figured out a way to stay connected instead of shutting it all down altogether. You just kind of learned to turn the temperature up and down on your efforts based on how your life was going. And that's how I know that not only is your success well-deserved and well-earned, but it will be forever. It'll be long-term because you know how to turn that dial up and down instead of using it like a light switch when it's on and off, which is what dieting does.
Yeah, beautifully said. I think that's one thing that you've done a great job of demonstrating, and being a leader in our community is just showing what it actually looks like to be able to do a program. And some days it's a 25% effort and some days it's 75%. And sometimes when life, you know, starts to settle, the dust starts to settle, we have the ability to apply 100% of ourselves. But knowing how, to use your language, Steph, to turn the dial up and down is the most valuable skill. Because as you also said, Steph, we're so used to binary thinking through dieting. It's all or nothing. And if it can't be all, then it has to be nothing. But there's so much value in even just being able to apply 25%, 50% in a certain season of life, because that is real life. We have a lot of competing priorities, but you're still going to do laps around the version of you who decided not to sign up for the program, who's still waiting for the perfect time to get started, right? Even if you were only able to occasionally apply that degree, the reality is you're so much further ahead for at least doing what you could, right? And so a year nearly has gone by now. And I think as listeners, what would be valuable for them is to hear maybe what some of your challenges were and how you were able to overcome them, right? So when you think about the program this past year, what would you say were some of your biggest obstacles?
Um, I guess I have a two-part answer to that. I have one on me about speaking up during the coaching calls. I still struggle with this. I feel like I need to give everyone else a turn first. So I'm kind of working on that because I know sometimes I have things I need to talk about, but and plus it's just really cool to listen to everybody because especially in the Masterful program, it's just such good conversation. You learn so much just listening, but you get better about speaking up. And then on the habits, oh, y'all might get upset with me about this, but Leslie posted a reel on Instagram probably like 2 weeks ago about, eating sweets before, you eat the other part of your meal. And I was not doing the best bites first. I saw that reel because it just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, I need these sweets first. I want that sweet taste when I walk away from a meal. And something about it clicked when I saw you kind of making light of it, and I've actually been doing that now, and it's made a huge difference. So I'm kind of kicking myself, like, well, I've been doing that from the first time both of you said that on a coaching call. I don't know, 9 months ago. Probably would have made a lot more progress.
That's funny. I mean, the reality is it doesn't have to be the sweet. It just has to be whatever is best on your plate, right? Because as a kid growing up, I was encouraged to eat the crust on my pizza and my sandwiches. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a whole ass grown adult. Like I don't actually have to eat the crust anymore. And similarly, if what I'm most excited about on my plate is, I guess the interior of a sandwich, then I could just cut the sandwich in half and start with the center. I mean, that was kind of like a revelation of sorts, being, we get accustomed to doing the same things and eating the same way. We don't check ourselves. But the philosophy, the theory behind all of that, just for our listeners, is when you start with the best bites, it's so much easier to walk away from the shitty bites, from the uninteresting food that we wouldn't consume otherwise, because we feel like we have to earn it or justify eating more. Well, it's just vegetables, or it's just carrots, or whatever the case may be. And so we just end up overeating. But calories are calories at the end of the day, and overeating is overeating. It doesn't matter if it's a crust from a sandwich or if it's carrots. And so we get into the habit of overeating or cleaning our plate, then it doesn't really matter what's on the plate, frankly. And so just starting with what you're most excited about really does create an environment for you to lose interest in your meal much more quickly and then step away without feeling like you've missed out on anything. So, Steph, anything you want to add to this?
I just think it's so funny because you're a testament, that confession is a testament to how you actually don't have to do all the things all the time. Just because we give you a lot of tools and a lot of information and ways to do things doesn't mean it's for you in that moment. The reality is we want you doing this, the least amount of effort for the biggest amount of impact that's not going to disrupt your life and the things that are important to you. And if you feel like you have to do all the things, you're going to get burnt out on the process so quickly. So we really want you to take what resonates at the time and work the program, get the result from it. And then when you're ready to level up, or you hear something a different way and it clicks in a new way, or you're willing to kind of experiment or try, or whatever, you have the emotional bandwidth to be like, yeah, maybe I could eat my cookie first and like not feel sad when my meal was over or whatever, then try those things. And everybody kind of takes them at a different pace or different times of the program. Sounds like it was a good time for that to be introduced for you because you're curious about it now and can laugh about it now. Whereas before it might have just activated deprivation or restriction for you, or felt like a rule or something difficult. So I think it's just a really good example of how, you don't have to do it all to be successful. You just have to do what's right for you at the time.
We also just get so stuck in our box way of thinking that stepping outside of it just seems like, no, that's not for me. Or like, we're not even really open to hearing it or trying something different or new because we're so locked into our rules or our quote unquote right way of doing things. So we're not really experimental, but Yeah, I'm with you, Steph. It just reminds me of that saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so, Deon, thanks for sharing that. I feel like there's got to be like a bigger obstacle, though, in the last year than not incorporating the best bites first. You know, a year is a long time. And I love that you went through all 4 seasons with us, basically, because you really get an opportunity to see how you respond at different stages in your life, different, like the holidays, right? That's a typical one for people, or like the weekend eating or the nighttime snacking. I mean, nobody comes into this program obviously having it all figured out, right? We kind of have just like a handful of things. And I say most clients only have like, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 habits that are really like holding them back in a big way, consistently enough that's keeping them stuck. And when you kind of look at them individually and work on them individually while replacing your eating habits with the new ones, then we build momentum, then we build consistency, then we kind of like break through those barriers. And so when you joined, would you say, like, what were your obstacles? Was it, you mentioned consistency, but consistency with what specifically? What habits would you say were maybe holding, just 1 or 2 that was holding you back?
Um, Currently, I mean, because it's still, something I would say is holding me back that I'm working on, and probably was the issue in the very beginning too. Um, was stopping at a 5, on the fullness scale, the 1 to 10 fullness scale. Um, it's it was really easy to stop at a 6, and then it kind of got a little harder to stop at a 5. But as we've talked about on a lot of our calls lately together, now it's like, okay, Deon, stop pushing the 5, actually stop when you're at a 5. Don't see how far you can push it so you get to 6. And then the other thing, I thought I did great with the snacking at first, which I did. And I know that drinking alcohol is not something that that is, put out to everyone. That's not something everybody works on in this program. But after, one-on-one calls, especially with Stephanie, we realized that with my goals and what I was trying to do, I was still snacking. I was liquid snacking. And that's still, my biggest issue that I have to work on, I think, is lattes and, a glass of wine as often as I do it, and in ways that aren't serving me. The latte is like my 3rd or 4th caffeinated drink of the day. It doesn't make me feel good at that point. It makes my heart race. And it's not supporting my goals, or my wallet. And then, I've developed this habit of, drinking half a glass of wine very often, more days than not. And it's once again, not supporting my goals in multiple ways, my weight loss goals, or, I've developed these great habits of waking up early and moving in the morning. And I'm getting to an age where drinking the night before kind of affects that. So yeah, that's I would say those 2 things, the quote unquote liquid snacking and the really stopping at a 5, not like a 5-6.
Like phoning it in at the 5, like, what can I get away with here? Yeah, very common. But I mean, I think those are so relatable. Everybody in our community, basically, for the most part, struggles with, I don't even want to say struggles. It's just bringing awareness to the alcohol and the lattes. And again, like I said earlier, it's just little by little by little, this stuff just adds up. And it's the little stuff that does tend to keep people, feeling frustrated at the end of the day. And so I think that's extremely common and certainly relatable. So I appreciate you sharing that. Was there ever a point in the program or the process where you felt like quitting or giving up? I mean, something I often experience with our clients and stuff, I know you can speak to this as well, is there's a very rigid, all or nothing perfectionist mindset. And this program, of course, really challenges that, because our whole shtick is encouraging people to embrace being imperfect, be the student, don't put the pressure on yourself to be an expert, because frankly, you're not. This is new compared to dieting. And so I'm just curious if there was any part of you that ever felt like quitting, or like this was too hard, or giving up. I never really got that impression from you, but again, I know you and Steph work pretty closely together. So maybe there's something I don't know.
Yeah, no, I never thought about quitting or giving up. Even when I would get really frustrated that, which kind of came and went, that I wasn't seeing what I wanted to see on the scale. But I never thought about giving up because I was seeing too much of it, the program leak into my life in positive ways. And I knew that things were really clicking in my brain that were helping me, at the bare minimum, maintain my weight, if not lose weight very slowly. Because it was helping with my relationships, my parenting, my career, my studies. But the perfectionist mindset definitely fought a lot against me. It still does a lot of times. But it was really hard at first because I wanted to change a lot of things um, at once. I wanted this big life changing before and after, this and that. I wanted to see results fast. And it was really hard to just focus on a few things at once, which is the science behind this program is to build habits. And, as both of you talk about so much, it's focusing on a small amount of things at a time. And I think on one of the coaching calls, I even asked y'all, well, why do I have this urge to just want to change everything? And, it's funny though, because after, having so many talks with y'all and really just saying, okay, I'm gonna trust the process for a second, I'm no long term, but I'm gonna trust it for a second. Now it's how I approach everything in my life, is just focusing on small things. The boring things. I'm spending like 2 minutes a day trying to learn Turkish, where my dad's from Istanbul. And I mean, I don't know a lot, but I know a lot more than I did 4 months ago. So it's funny, but the perfectionist mindset, it's hard in something like this where you're really trying to build these long term things.
Yes, I recall one specific conversation. I was like, you know what? Sometimes success looks like doing less and not more. And I kind of pushed back on you a bit about that. And I mean, I think it's true, because we're so used to doing all the things. And again, that's what creates so much friction, is feeling like we've got to change so much, but it becomes unsustainable. And frankly, when we change too many things all at once, we're not really learning a whole lot from the things that we are changing, because it's like, I don't know if I'm overeating as a result of this or that thing or this thing. And so, as you know, Deon, it is very step by step. We break things down. I remember you even saying, like, it's almost impossible to fail in this program because everything is just broken down in baby steps for you. And if you follow it, then you will be successful. And I know when we are in our pain, when we're in our discomfort, we want our body to change, it is hard to go slow, but we need to go slow in order to go fast. Steph?
The perfection thing is something that plagues so many of our clients, and I definitely understand why, right? It's just a way to say, like, hey, I need to feel a certain kind of way. I want some reassurance that I'm going to be okay, that I'm going to get to feel the way I want to feel at the end of this thing. So if I could start feeling it in advance, that would be awesome. And Deon, you and I had so many wonderful conversations when it came to the mental and emotional growth, the pieces that are so much not about the food. They manifest as food. They manifest as self-care at the end of the day with a glass of unwinding with your wine or whatever, and the comforts and those kinds of things. But I think one of the reasons why you've been able to apply this to the rest of your life is because you didn't just go all in on the habits. You went all in on the mindset work, on the psychology. You really are someone who I can tell seeks to understand the why behind the things that you do, the choices you make, what you're getting out of them, for better or worse, and being willing to experiment on how to improve. And, the cost of some of that is sometimes being hard on yourself when it's like, oh, I'm trying all these things and I'm willing to experiment, but I just can't, seem to make myself do it during certain times or whatever. But watching the growth go from like, okay, I'm doing this program and I'm doing the habits and whatever, to I think so different now, has been nothing short of amazing. And I would love to hear what you think has been kind of the biggest shift mentally or emotionally for you that has helped you feel like this program has been a success.
Sure. It goes back to one of the habits, actually. And just to give a little bit of background, pageants were very hostile mentally, and now I'm in law school, which is very hostile mentally. So when I've always in most of my jobs been in a very hostile environment. So perfectionism was always in beating myself up for mistakes, and quite frankly just being around a lot of people most of my life that were just very critical and harsh, whether they meant well or not. That's always something I struggled with, when it came to a lot of areas of my life, but especially, eating habits, because, you want to do it perfect and you just beat yourself up when it doesn't happen. So, one of the things that I blew off, probably the first week or two of doing Outsmart Overeating was tracking your wins. Um, it just seemed really kind of I don't know, hokey to me. Like, why do I need to write what? Your daily win is what it is. And that's been life altering when I actually once again decide to let up for a minute and say, okay, I'm gonna try it for a second. And I'm paying for this. And now I actually have a separate journal, outside of the program, where I just write down my wins of life. And even if it doesn't happen every day, it happens most days. And it's changed the way I think about everything. And it's definitely helped me in this program, probably a lot more than a lot of things did. For example, I ate when I wasn't hungry, and I didn't really like the food at a family gathering recently, a few days ago. And I got to the bottom of why I did that. But I could immediately be proud of the fact that I didn't eat an entire piece of cake that wasn't good. I ate half a piece of cake that wasn't good. And man, that's a lot of improvement. And it's leaked into all areas of my life. I kind of got my butt handed to me at a meeting last week for a mistake I made, and handled it pretty gracefully, getting my butt handed to me in front of a lot of people. And I moved on, and I didn't even think about it, because whenever you're not harping on your mistakes, it's so much easier to let things go. And it was cool because people were coming up to me after the meeting saying, "Oh, that was really cool how you handled that." And it's like, it's nice to hear that someone else noticed it, but like, I already noticed it. That's so cool.
I love stories like that because we know how much work we're doing on ourselves, and your coaches know how much work you're doing. But when people in your life start to notice how different you are or how you're handling things, that can be really rewarding. And I'm not talking about just like this external validation, that's all nice and whatever, but it's just evidence to me that you are actually changing, that it's not just, oh, I'm doing all this work. It's manifesting, it's showing up, it's happening in your behaviors. And we talk about all the time in this program how this program has nothing to do with food, even though we talk about food, and food is the vehicle in which we use to teach these habits and behaviors. When it comes to the psychology stuff, as you mentioned, it helps with parenting and relationships and work, and you just become so much more capable and resilient because you understand yourself better than you ever have, because you take the time to learn through journaling, through what you're proud of, counting those wins, and then assessing the areas that don't feel like a win. It's like, oh, that was a bump in the road. Why did I do what I did? I didn't really like that. It's not really who I want to be. Let me figure that out. And it becomes faster and more intuitive, for lack of a better word, in all these other areas of your life where it just kind of pops up and shows. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that story. And I'm sorry you got your ass handed to you in a meeting. That's never fun.
Yeah. Well, the thing about the programs are we don't focus on external validators, like you said, stuff. So there's not sending in measurements every week or stepping on the scale. So we really do have to turn inward and learn how to validate ourselves. As I often say, if you're eating like an asshole, if you're treating yourself in a way that doesn't align with your goals and values, if you're skipping workouts or hitting snooze one too many times or showing up to work late, we can feel it. And that's what we really want to focus on, is learning how to interact with food, movement, your career, your relationships in a way that feels good to you, because we are emotional beings, and that is our primary motivation for making decisions, any decision. So to just completely dismiss how that influences what we do, to me, is very short-sighted. In a weight loss program, that might sound a little crazy, but the tracking the wins is, listen, we never ask our clients to do anything without it backed by research that hasn't been documented. And frankly, we've had the opportunity to witness tons of clients now go through this program. And you start to see patterns and trends and what's working and what's not working. And so I can totally understand the resistance to it, because it's like, how is this going to help me? But you're a great example of how it does help you. And it doesn't just show up in the way you interact with your food, it's how you show up in your own life. We develop a habit of focusing on what's not going well. That makes us feel worse. We're less inclined to be motivated and follow through with the things we say are important to us. However, when we start to look at things through the lens of, well, actually, I got these 18 meals right, what can I learn in these 3 meals that didn't go so well? Now we're solving for a problem, we're learning a lesson, and we can apply it moving forward. But one thing I just wanted to get your thoughts on, Deon, and I'm going to completely shift gears here. And Steph, this is really going to be a part of the conversation that I want to invite you into, is the body image work, right? Like, this is one thing that I think is very different in our programs versus mainstream, is there is a whole pillar where we focus on body image. And as a pageant girl, I imagine that that might have been something that you might not have known you needed, but now recognize how that was helpful for you. So Deon, I'd love to get your thoughts on having that body image work. I remember even early in the program where, I mean, as all girls do, we kind of struggle with, oh, I got a vacation coming up or a girls trip coming up and I'm going to be in a swimsuit or whatever. I just kind of love to get your insight into how maybe that was useful or helpful to you in this process.
I mean, it, useful, I guess, is an understatement, is what I'm trying to say. Trying to find words for I mean, it helped the weight loss, which sounds okay. No one wants to think about that. They just want results, but no, it really did, because it took so much of the stress off. I did Stephanie's, separate body image workshop, and she and I talked a lot, also about body image on the call. And this was another perfectionism thing I struggled with, because I went on a family vacation shortly after doing the program, where it's just a bunch of normal people around, you know, that you could pick out of, a crowd. And I came back and I was like, I can't believe it. I didn't care that I was bending over in a swimsuit and I had rolls. I saw this picture and I had a roll in it, but it was such a cute picture of me and my daughter. I posted it, never in my life. I was so proud. And not to take away from that, but then about 3 weeks later, I went on a different vacation with just my friends. And I went to this pool that had a casino in it and stuff. Very different crowd, obviously, family vacation with a bunch of kids and parents and grandparents versus a casino pool. And I did not have that same energy. I went there with the same energy and felt it slowly just leak out of me in an awful way. And I think I told one of y'all that when I was laying out, I even put in my AirPods and was listening to Stephanie's body image work. I was like, no, come back, come back. And I felt like I had failed. I came back and I was tearing up on that coaching call. So I was like, I thought I had it figured out. What the heck? And y'all pointed out all this stuff about one, this isn't linear, and also you were in a completely different environment than, a family vacation. So that work was very hard in the beginning. I would probably say I've had focused more of my efforts on body image in the beginning than I did anything else. And it paid off. It really did. One of the other hokey things that I didn't want to do, but did, was write, a letter to yourself. And I remember writing in it, that I just want to be able to wake up every day and not, immediately look in the mirror and see if my stomach's any flatter. And I thought that was, I mean, that's from my heart. That is what I wanted. But I kind of wrote it with this feeling of like, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but, that is what I want. And then it just hit me out of nowhere like a month ago. Wow, I don't do that every day anymore. I don't do that most days. You know, it's wild. It's just treating your body with more respect. I don't wear things that don't flatter me anymore. Um, it's a whole different world. So yeah, it wasn't just useful, it was life altering for me.
I remember having a one-on-one conversation with you not too long ago where you had brought up that you're just like, I don't do the body checking thing all the time anymore. And that was something that you wanted. And I love how some of this, anything that is like, let me get in touch with my deeper self and be proud of myself or talk about my hopes and dreams is like hokey. It's like the weird thing. It's like my daily wins. No, I'm not going to be proud of myself. Oh, a letter to myself. Like, no, I know what's in this head. It ain't good. We're not putting it on paper. Yeah, just like that's just weird. And those tend to be the things that, I think we resist them because we're afraid the dam's going to break. And often it does, I mean, so many people come out, the floodgates open and we're in tears. Like I didn't realize how much I needed to talk to myself or be proud of myself or just see what I was actually thinking about myself and what I really wanted for me. And so I get the skepticism, I get the doubt, but I also really appreciate that you had contrasting experiences where it was like, oh, it's easy for me to be proud of myself and love my body and care about myself and be confident in one circumstance, and another circumstance completely changes it based on environment. And that's how we know that it's not our external circumstances, but the way that we're thinking about them that changes this. And the longer you spend working on that relationship with yourself, it's like any other relationship. There's going to be bumps along the way. There's going to be times where you're just like, oh my gosh, this relationship, I swear, is going to be the death of me. And then other times where you're just like, this is so worth the work. I'm so proud of us, And so it's the same thing with body image in my mind is, hey, you don't actually have to love your body in every circumstance, in every photo, in every experience. It's not the point. It's like, yeah, it'd be nice to love every photo, but also it's nice not to have the pressure to have to. Sometimes we're just there to experience and have fun and then notice, why am I not feeling so comfortable in this circumstance where I was in the other? It's like, it might be comparison. It just might be comparison that we want to work on and, figure out how to have our own back in those situations. But you grew so much in the body image work. And I love that you went headfirst into the body image work. And like, I put so much time and energy and effort into it because it did change things for you. It seems like you came into the program with the right attitude of, I'm not just going to lose some weight. I'm really going to change how I think and feel. I'm really going to do the work on myself so that I come out of this program better for it, not just thinner for it.
Sure. And one thing I will say that made, specifically your body image, discussions, workshops more effective for me than anything else I had ever, sort of passed by, is that I keep using the word hokey, but yours wasn't hokey. I think the mainstream, love your body, love this, love that. It's not super helpful. Yeah, it's aspirational. I want to love my body and all this stuff, but yours was so it was so real. You're like, no, don't stand there and like lie to yourself. Let's figure out how you're actually going to love your body. And it was just a realistic way to go about it that just made logical sense.
I appreciate that perspective. I think when we see a lot of mainstream self-care or self-love messages, it's really more of, as you said, it's aspirational, it's a concept. in this body image work, it's a verb. It's an action that you take. It's a way that you show up unconditionally in spite of your opinion. You know, it's not just getting to a place where you're just like, cellulite's my favorite. I'm so glad I have it. Nobody's ever going to be like, if you are, fine, kudos, but the rest of the world is just, we have gotten the message for so long that it's wrong and that it needs to be fixed. And then, you know, like whatever the flaw is, cellulite's the stand-in, but, you know, pick your flaw, boobs or stretch marks or, you know, sagging skin, whatever, I don't care. And it's like, we all have that messaging all the time. And we need to figure out how to love our bodies in spite of that and just be like, this is just one part of me. I actually don't have to look in the mirror and be like, I am so sexy and beautiful and gorgeous no matter what, in order to have that loving relationship with ourselves. It's the other way around, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a big part of the body image work is just don't be a dick to yourself about it. Don't let it keep you on the sidelines of your life, showing up and doing the hard thing when you're uncomfortable or you're triggered. And of course you are. You've been conditioned to believe the things that you possess are problematic when realistically they're not. They're normal. And we've just been basically brainwashed to believe that our body is a problem to solve. And it's not even about loving your body. If you get to that point, great. That's awesome. Happy for you. But can we just not let a bad body image thought spiral into a bad body image day, a bad body image week, and now we're doing like extreme dieting and these unhealthy practices, right? It's just learning how to be in, like, find some peace. The thoughts are still going to come. They still happen. Stuff happened to you. They happen to me. The difference is I don't make them mean anything. I don't allow them to ruin my day. I don't let them kind of have me back to scheming and planning how I'm going to diet and get back to something restrictive tomorrow through the lens of self-loathing and punishing. And if you're not having that conversation, then you are going to wake up somebody who's 30 pounds lighter potentially, and still be just as dissatisfied in your body. And it's not a true, authentic way that you lost it, because it was, again, coming from this self-loathing place instead of like self-respect or self-care, self-love. And that's a very different way to approach weight loss. One is permanent. The other is temporary, because it really hinges on, I guess, your opinion of yourself. Deon, did you want to add anything to that?
I think y'all said pretty much everything, but yeah, I can't think of the last time I had a whole day, you know, because it was easy to blow off. It's like, girl, you feel this way because you're bloated right now, like all these external things, you know, you're wearing this that, you know, kind of tugs at your, like, if you still feel this way tomorrow, we'll revisit. And I never do, you know. So it's never a spiral, which is, I love that word, because that's exactly what it used to turn into. You know, you're kind of able to blow off those I guess, initial thoughts and not make them be this whole thing.
Yeah, it's totally one of the most important pillars that gets the least amount of attention. And because people don't see the value in it, it's kind of what you were saying earlier about this feels maybe hokey, because that's what we're used to, is hokey, surface level, like affirmations in the mirror. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, sure, that can help to an extent, but we need to actually be actionable. And I think that's one thing that Steph offers, is actionable tools to help you be in relationship with your body. Because let's be honest, in any relationship, there has to be action. There has to be an effort, right, to have this kind of relationship. So, all right, Deon, just a couple more questions and then I'm going to let you go here, but I'm just so grateful to have you on and sharing your wisdom and experience in the program. I guess one thing I'd love for you to maybe share with our audience is how your relationship with food is different today, maybe like holidays, like you just described, you know, going on a girls' trip, or even how you manage stressors at work. I mean, you kind of shared a little bit of a glimpse into that, but I guess maybe a better way of framing the question is if you could go back and give yourself some advice on day one of this program, right? What do you wish you would have known at the beginning that you know now? If you could kind of articulate that and say, go back to past version of you and give yourself some words of wisdom, what would you recommend?
Sure. For the program specifically, just to trust the process, the way I always kind of, I guess, rubber band myself, is you just paid all this money for this. Like, why aren't you doing it? You might as well just do it for this, exact period of time. It's not an indefinite thing. And every single time I gave something a shot that I was sort of resistant to, it paid off twofold, and yeah, it's such a cliche saying, trust the process, but it really is true. And I mean, just as an example of, the trigger foods in the beginning, you're supposed to eat your trigger foods, and mine was macarons. They still are, but I mean, I wouldn't call them a trigger anymore. That's a strong word, but I love them. And it used to be this thing where if I had a good day or a bad day, or as we were celebrating, that was what my husband did, is he brought me this specific box of macarons from the store down the street, and it came in a pack of 6, because they're expensive. And I would eat them the exact same night. They were gone. And if I was feeling like really confident or just in a really good spot, I guess maybe 2 nights, maybe. And recently, I let a thing of macarons go bad in the fridge. Food just isn't this scary thing that feels like it has control over me anymore. I don't stress about like needing to say no to things at social gatherings. It's just very different. Holidays mean nothing to me. Even if I do, maybe eat a little more than I feel like, past being satisfied at a specific, holiday. I mean, everyone loves to use holidays as the example. I'm in the back of my mind just immediately be able to say, well, why'd you do that? Okay, but can we just let this go? You're doing all this other good stuff every other day of the, year. Does it really matter what you're doing, at your family's Christmas Eve thing once a year? So yeah, it's different. I can't tell you the last time I walked away from a meal with any sort of fullness in my stomach, um, it's it's just different. It's really neat.
I'm glad you brought up the trigger foods, because that's another aspect of this program that I think makes most fitness professionals side eye the hell out of this process. And myself is like, I've never seen or heard of anybody asking a client to deliberately, and I'm like, that's how I know that you don't work with binge eaters or understand scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset, and how to get your client from one state of mind into another. And so in the beginning, I know it can be really scary and intimidating for people, because they're like, if I start eating macarons, in your case, I'm never going to stop. And as a matter of fact, that's what got me into this mess. My problem isn't that I need to be eating them more, it's that I need to be eating them less. I just love it too much. So how do I learn like more self-discipline? How do I develop more willpower, right? Like that's the conversation that they want to be having. And there's fear, because the fear is ultimately fear of weight gain. And so what advice do you have for somebody who might be contemplating joining Unstuffed or doing some one-on coaching with Steph or I, or, joining Outsmart Overeating, if and when we ever open the doors to that program again? How would you comfort them, or what would you let them know that, hey, you're not going to turn into Jabba the Hutt in this process and program?
Sure. I mean, to be completely honest, I did gain maybe 2 pounds in the beginning, maybe 2 or 3, and then they came off really quickly. My body freaks out kind of dramatically. I feel like eat, when I eat different, it just kind of goes into, whoa, what are you doing? So yeah, I think we talked through this when I got back from Vegas during the program, a vacation I went on. And I thought that I, gained 4 or 5 pounds the day after I got off the plane. And they were gone, a week or so later. So it's once again just the trust the process kind of thing. You know, Maybe just go into it assuming you're going to gain a little bit of weight, if that calms you instead of the what if, worst case scenario. But if you're really leaning into the process, it will come off if you're doing everything you're supposed to do ultimately. And then, it's really, really cool that I don't have this, willpower struggle all the time when I have macarons in my fridge. Like it means nothing to me, as far as just a constant fight where you're like white knuckling it. If I'm doing something where I'm white knuckling any kind of habit in my life anymore than trying to, it's an immediate switch of like, well, something's not right if you're having to do that. Now you need to assess what's even going on here. But anyway, yeah, I would say just maybe go into it thinking you're going to gain a little bit of weight, because if you're doing what you're supposed to, it's going to come right off.
Yeah, the deal that I often negotiate or offer individuals is, would you be willing to gain, like you said, 2 pounds, even up to 5 pounds, maybe? I would say, it happens occasionally, but it's pretty uncommon or rare, at least to my knowledge, to be able to lose that and then the rest and be able to effortlessly maintain it for the rest of your life. I mean, that's ultimately what's up for grabs here. Is like, sure, there might be a little discomfort in the beginning with a little bit of weight gain, but also, can we zoom out and look at the big picture, what you're going to get for that in exchange, right? Is a lifetime, as you've described it, of not being able to keep macaroons in your home and completely forget about them, be able to navigate holidays without feeling anxious, not chronically overthinking, scale weight and body checking and all of those things that just kind of keep us stuck in this cycle that feels like it never really truly ends. Steph?
I just want to add something for everyone who's just like freaking out and being like, nope, not doing it. Can't even stand to see the scale go up 2 pounds. I might die. Uh, if the weight gain happens, it's a direct result of the life you're currently living. It's a direct result of the restriction and deprivation and avoidance of the foods that you currently really love and want to have, but won't let yourself have until you finally do let yourself have them. And then you eat your whole ass face off. And, eventually you find that place of peace. But if the wheels feel like they're coming off just at the very thought of including these foods on purpose, if that just immediately starts like terrifying you, then you need this program more than anyone, because that is a sign to me that you are afraid of food and it's controlling you. And chances are you are just, one bad day away from going and buying that shit and eating it all in one sitting anyway, because that's what happens. So yeah, sometimes in the beginning of these programs, people overeat their trigger foods, but it's not the trigger foods that make you overeat. And people see that happen. They try this sometimes on their own without the guidance, the coaching, the help, but they try to include the trigger foods. And they're like, see, I gained weight. I couldn't stop eating them. That means the food is addictive and bad. And it's like, no, that's not what that means. That's not at all what that means. But I understand why you would feel that way, because that's what the diet industry told you, is these foods got you here. And then you're like, no, okay, that makes sense. I'll add them in. And it's like, nope, see, I lost my shit. It's like, okay, we are prepared for that and we expect that. So I appreciate that perspective, Deon, because I think that people do wonder what will happen if they start eating, I don't know, Sour Patch Kids or ice cream for breakfast or something like that. And it's like, well, there are a few things that could happen, but we've got your back every step of the way.
Well, Deon, again, so grateful to have you on the podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with Steph, and I'm sure there are other things you would rather be doing on your day off, but we're so glad that you showed up and were able to share your experience with the program. We are going to be opening the doors in April, so we have that to look forward to, accepting new clients at the end of April. I think it's the 22nd or something along those lines. So if you're on the fence or you're thinking about it, definitely make sure you join the interest list. But anything else you want to add, Deon, before we go?
No, I think we hit just about everything, but thank you all so much for everything. It's been a really, really cool journey.
Yeah, I think I speak for both of us when I say it's certainly our pleasure. Well, thanks to our listeners for tuning in. We hope everyone has a great week, and we will catch you next Tuesday.